Alright, the reason I called you here today is because, don't get too excited about the overlay, it's just a mock-up right now, because I kind of want to teach Python, because I happen to know, am I tracking? Yes, I am. Because I happen to know enough Python to be dangerous, which is what you say when you actually don't know Python, and you all are dangerous about it because you think you know more than you do, and then you get up to shenanigans. And the thing, though, my mission statement here is no one has taught Python the way that I like learning Python. And part of that is because people tend to want to do really basics all the time. And there's data types that you need to operate constantly with programming. So people will do basics about strings and basics about integers and then basics about tuples. And then they might not even get to dictionaries because they think that's advanced for being a basic concept. And I was like, nope, you're all silly. Because if I'm learning about strings, I just want to learn when I'm going to be using them, what the practical applications are. And I'd rather strings, but go deep into it. And so this is literally just a sample mock-up of what it would look like if I decided to pursue this odd vision of teaching Python a little bit, or other things as well. So you can see, I just kind of threw this together this morning, and a little bit before this morning also. So we're just going to get to a quick little mock-up. And so if you know Python or code, or if you like learning things, definitely let me know what you think. We're going to keep this super duper short, and then I'm going to throw code at you, and if you do not care, skip to the end of the video. I've got a timestampy thing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I just want to get this out of the way, front load, some of what the Python, what my concept is. So we're going to start with my concept, and then I'll meet you at the end of my concept, and we'll talk about what happened. I recognize I did this in a really awkward way, because I just threw this together. This is what we're working with here. Now, so who is this for? This would be for me. But then before we move on with any of this mock-up, I want to be very specifically clear about who this series would be for, because there's lots of places to learn programming, and I'm not going to be a super-duper good programming teacher. I don't know if you could tell this about me. That's not one of my fortes. I make silly videos, and this is not a silly video. This is an outrageously serious video. The thing is, though, I do want to do development logs about the application I've been building out, but I also want people to be able to follow if they want to, whether or not they have a lot of programming experience or not. So my ethic here would be to build a resource that I know I've covered, so if people wanted to follow along, this is all the tools that we need to get along to this step so far. So I don't know if I would be excellent at teaching programming, but I think I could be excellent at guiding people through my process of application development, which is something that deeply interests me, because it's something I've been going on, and it's a journey that I'm super excited about, and I think it'd be really cool if other people could be excited about it too. And it's the sort of thing that I want to share, but I don't want to just share it and it's super gibberish nonsense and it means nothing. So this would be an example of when I need to tell people, oh, we're manipulating a lot of strings right now, and here's some of how that's going to work and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that would be a separate side video for if people wanted to learn what's going on, they could do that, because I've specifically told them what's going on. But the main body of the series would just be devlogs, or maybe programming it on stream, which is why I made the overlays all look how they do. It's just a mock-up. So if any of this is exciting to you, please let me know. When there's a mechanism in programming you're going to be using a lot, you want to make a function for that. And whatever the input is, you go, I added furry to it. Nope, that's wrong. Okay, hang on. So going super basics is not... So I'm going to just explain this top block. Okay. Then we have a little function right there that just takes whatever text I put into it and add the word furry to the end of it and then give that string back to me. The way that's going to be useful is by making new strings that say, take something, adjust it, and that's my new value. That's going to be really useful for a lot of times when we're manipulating text, and we're going to be doing that a ton. And this right here is a better example of how we're going to be manipulating strings. You can add little empty spaces, which is what those angle brackets are, and then at the end you can say something fancy like .format and then whatever your words are, so that you can say, goodness gracious, I love Phineas Former, or you could say I love spaghetti sauce, or whatever you want, and then that's a pretty common way to format strings in programming. There's lots of different ways to pull this off. That's something that you're going to be seeing a lot, and those angle brackets just mean it's a blank space that we're going to be putting random stuff into it based on whatever logic we program, and there's going to be a lot of program logic to put really cool stuff in there, and that's kind of what that is. You'll see that a lot. Here I said yell, and it just prints out whatever it is, but the uppercase version of it. So if you want to yell something, you can do that. The reason that would be useful is when it's called print debugging, when you have a problem and it just says print the problem, and that's print debugging. So you can just see what your program's doing. It's not great, but everyone knows about it. But I'm not very smart all the time, so when my program had a problem, I wanted it to be very obvious. So I made a different script in my actual program later on that like was capitalized, but then it had like a fancy border all over it, so like I could not forget that there was a problem. Or other times in my program, there's going to be little player choices. And inside of my little command prompt, when it was all just text-based for a while ago, and now it's changing, I simulated what a button looks like just using characters to lay it out kind of nicely for me, and that was still really great, because you normally would just say print words, and that goes to like your console. So I could just say yell, and then words, and then all of the code inside of that would like format it and make it nice and big. So for me, it's still just a super simple command, but it does fancy things, and I would do that a whole bunch, and the most useful part was honestly when I was simulating what a button press would look like. So it was a simple command, but it did a lot of fancy things, and I would do that over and over and over, and that's another example of how we're going to be manipulating strings moving forward. And then this I accidentally copied from also up here, so we don't even need that, get out of here. And then those two are example executions of the functions I just barely talked you through. I don't think that we need to actually go through that though, because I don't think any one of us cares. I think that we all trust us on what that these things do. I just told you about it, and if you wanted to do that, you could do that, but I commented out the code because I don't actually feel like I have to show you that. You're smart. And then this one I'm really happy with, just because it gives you a good example of what naming conventions are like in Python and in code generally, because it's really important to name things in the way that makes sense, because you want your code to be self-documenting and self-referential. So anybody who shows up and is like, I want to help out with this program, or I've been hired to, or whatever, they look at it and they know, oh, based on how things are named, we know exactly how this works. I'm going to try and be really good about my naming conventions as I move forward in the program that we would be seeing me guide us through, which is what this mock-up tutorial would be for. What I've highlighted here, let's talk you through it. Show example of split, unnecessary really to like make a function that just does this, but when you split a string, it turns into like text and defaults by space. So you get a new list that is every single word individually, which is useful if you want to do commands for every individual word. And I would do that when I had little signifiers. And it's like if there's an @ symbol, it means I have to do fancy code to make my interactive novel do fancy things. And so I would parse through for every single word if you see this character do stuff. And there's better ways to pull that off by now, but that's just how I figured it out on my own, and that's what .split brackets would do. This is my favorite thing about naming conventions, and then also this is sloppy. I recognize this is sloppy because of how I laid out the windows. I don't have word wrap on, and it's just whatever. But this is bastardized string I decided to rebuild awkwardly equals empty string. So now everyone knows, what is this variable that I've initialized? Oh, is this where he bastardizes a string that he decides to rebuild awkwardly? It must be, because he named it that way. And you can do that. You can name things whatever the heck you want. That's a for loop. We'll cover it later, but honestly, it just means for every word inside of the split text, whatever, I can do that better. For loop, pretty basic, and you're going to be using these a whole bunch of ton in your programming, and you'll see me use it a whole bunch because everyone uses this a whole bunch. It's really common. For every word that you have, do stuff. Totally not a big deal. A lot of people, for me, names gets confusing here. They would say like for word in split.text, for text in text. Or like when you're breaking down a list, it kind of makes sense for if this is a list of fruits, then you would say for fruit in fruits. That always really confused me though, because you said the word fruit twice, but fruit refers to things inside of the collection of things that's fruits, and I just didn't really get that, and I still have a hard time with it. So I just use item, because I know that, you know, the list of fruits has a list of fruits, so I don't need to know, oh, it's fruits, but just for item, that just kind of makes more sense to me, but it also gets a little complicated to read sometimes. So be careful, because if you nest down loops, which you'll see a lot, so you would have for item in fruits, for example. But then if you have to do a bunch of subcommands for every item, then I would say for thing in item, and so I'm not super duper good at programming all the time, but that's what a for loop is. And then this is, as far as I can tell, a pretty standard but awkward way to adjust strings and rebuild text lines, because there's actually not a super duper good way to do that in programming, which is awkward and weird. At least I don't know what a better way would be. So this is bastardized string I decided to rebuild awkwardly, and it's going to just kind of equal itself at the moment, and then you're going to add furry to it, because bastardized string that I decided to rebuild awkwardly has a word. Hang on one sec. So I just changed and added a few things because I thought that would just be a lot better for our example here in our dummy lesson. So I went with list of words as my variable name. Not usually a good naming convention because if I know that the variable is a list, then I don't need to call it a list in the variable name, but we're doing that right now. It's okay, it's just a sample video. Then this next bit I made super duper complicated for no reason because I named it the way that I did, but we're gonna go for it. For every word one at a time in my list of words. Super duper easy, you can name anything you want to make it super easy to follow along. And for every word one at a time in my list of words, this is what we're gonna do. And you have the bastardized string, I decided to rebuild awkwardly, which we started out as just an empty, it doesn't even have anything in it. So it still has nothing in it. We take itself, which has nothing in it. Oh, I accidentally messed this up, so let me fix it. And then even just there is a good example of how rebuilding strings is really awkward to work with sometimes, so that's why this program is so complex to me, even though right now it's relatively simple, but anyway, we'll get to that later. So the bastardized string that I decided to rebuild awkwardly is still just kind of itself. And you're going to add together whichever your every word one at a time is. And then we decided to add the word furry. So you get the word at a time, the word furry, and then because we have the for loop, it just kind of does that for every single word, one word at a time. So every time you run through the list, the bastardized string you decided to rebuild awkwardly goes back to being what you just changed it to. And that's what this whole thing is for every word one at a time, update the bastardized string to include the word and also the word furry, and then do that again. Do that forever and ever and ever until you run out of words in your list of words. And for the sake of example, I could have just done print bastardized string I decided to rebuild awkwardly, but I decided to return it to be a little bit more fancy for our example. This is an example of setting a variable equal to a function output, because it returned the bastardized string. And so in our final example, I'm just saying show the example of split text for furry string, because I want to get my bastardized string, that sounds really funny, and I decided to set it equal to the output of the function that we were just examining. And then we're going to yell the final example, and I'm just curious what that looks like. I haven't tried running this, but it should work no problem. Let's see. See, you can do really silly things with programming. Look at how much it yelled at me, and it just says furry all of the time, and you can do whatever you want with programming, and no one should have this much power. Anyway, you can use programming for all sorts of stuff, and this is just a tutorial, this is a sample video I tried to throw together quickly, but I don't even think it worked out very well because I've never made anything like this. So I wanted to tell people, hey, this is something I'm thinking about working with. Let me know if this is and this would probably even go on like a second channel when I get more of the flow of what I have going on here. So if you liked this, let me know. If this was garbage, let me know. And if you don't care about this, also kind of let me know, but then also it's going to go on a different channel where this kind of content actually belongs. I just kind of wanted to put it here to show you guys what I've been working on and what I think I would be doing on stream on some days, and then how I'm overlaying things in general and just what I'm working on. This is one of the things I've been working on, and I really wanted to let you guys know. So let me know what you think about how I explain strings, because I think that I'm super duper good at them, and I think really all you have to do to be a good programmer is put the word furry everywhere in your program, because I actually don't know how to program anything at all, but when you become a furry, you kind of like get that, it's in like the package deal based on which one you select. And so I just kind of, after you buy your first tail, you're like, oh, well, I'm so good at programming. But I blew it forever ago on the StarCraft map editor of all things. And I really should have picked a better programming situation for my inherited furry programming trait that you get when you become a furry. So that's what this is. That's what this video was. I don't even know how this is going to go. I'm excited to edit this, though, and just see what I see. So, yeah, I'm going to walk out of frame. Wait, L for leave? Left for my left. I switched the video around. I feel so awkward. All right, so I'm going to go, and I just hope that whatever this video was, that it was super duper good, or at the very least, that it was super mediocre. We don't go for too much here on the Phineas Former channel. We just want, like, an average or above video. If we're, like, 6 out of 10, heck yeah, man, we are above average. So that's all we're looking for. All right, bye.